aspects of human de-evolution?
Yeah, Rick, call me back in when you start de-evolution, and I'll give you my fucking rundown on that. Right now. Goodbye, wimps. I'll see you later.
Are you all ready to join me today in our trip to outer space?
Come along quietly or not.
I will talk to you of art. For there is nothing else. Some artists bait a hook. Yes. You bite upon it.
Big deal. What time is it?
And now, without further ado.
Hello, folks. This is Albert Shivers, and you, right this second, are listening to another episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. This is the best B-movie of the podcasts. So, since last week's episode, there was a big break, and a lot's been going on. Between pandemics and riots and things, it's been hard to get guests on here, but we got two great ones on this episode. Isaac comes back, and he and I talk about astral projection, and we also talk about light pollution, and then we get into the de-evolution of humanity because of technology. And when we get to that part, we are joined in by our buddy Mike Strunk, who you may remember from about 2 episodes ago. He's coming back on the show, so that's going to be fun. And I hope you all are hanging in there during this pandemic. I got to say that one thing that has kept me sane in moments of insanity has been music. I've been listening to a lot of old jazz, but what else is new? But specifically, I've been listening to a lot of the Mills Brothers from the early 20s and 30s. And I've also been listening to a group called Lambert, Hendricks, and Vaughn. Now, this sort of segues into a little quick story I want to tell you guys. So, normally I keep my plans for the podcast and things secretive. I keep them secretive so there'll be a surprise. I'm just kind of over it, so I'm going to tell you about this. So, about 2 years ago, I got the address to the singer Yolanda Vaughn. She is a Sri Lankan jazz singer from, I believe, Ceylon. She was, I'm trying to think, I think from there she moved to Great Britain, where she met Billie Holiday and sort of became Billie Holiday's right hand. Billie Holiday took Yolanda Vaughn under her wing. Before all this, there was a group called Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. David Lambert, John Hendricks, and Annie Ross. They started in the late 40s into the 50s, that whole jazz beat thing. They were a tri-vocal group led by John Hendricks, who would take instrumental compositions, for instance, Count Basie songs, whatever, and put lyrics to them. And many times, the lyrics would run parallel to horn solos. So they really did this like vocal gymnastics a lot of the time. Annie Ross soon left the group, and in came Yolanda Vaughn. I got the address to Yolanda Vaughn. I wrote her a very nice letter and mailed it out, really not knowing whether or not this address was real, whether there was some other Yolanda Vaughn. I don't know. She lived in New York City. It sort of added up, so I sent the letter. Fast forward to easily 6 months later, maybe 5. I'll be nice and say 5. I'm sitting in a cafeteria at the college. I happened to be there that day. I wasn't a student at that point, but I happened to be there, and I'm sitting in the cafeteria, sort of just gathering my thoughts for whatever reason. I was just taking a load off. Who knows? But anyway, I'm sitting there, and my phone rings. It's a number I don't know, and the little birdie on my shoulder, who guides me so well, says, "You should answer this." So I answer the phone, and it's this dude, and he goes, "Is this Albert Shivers?" And I was like, "Yeah, it is." He said, "All right, hold on." And I don't know who this guy is, but he puts Yolanda Vaughn on the phone. Here I sit in one of the cafeterias at East Stroudsburg University on the phone with what I consider a jazz legend. My heart was racing. I just was almost shaking, and there was nowhere I could go. Any which direction that I could have walked in to try to find more silence would have brought me through tremendous volume. And I didn't want to be like, hold on, or let me call you back, because that's not cool. So her and I spoke for about a half an hour. At this time, I was doing another podcast called Roots Revival Meeting, which was supposed to be all about old jazz and old blues and old music in general. The wheels fell off that podcast about 4 episodes in, and I've been very happy with the way this one's going. At the time, I wanted Yolanda Vaughn to be a guest on that podcast. I would go to her, and we'd sit down and have a long conversation. Between that particular podcast getting rickety and then falling apart, and at the time, Yolanda Vaughn was just about to have like minor surgery, I believe, on her hand. So she wanted to wait till after that. So she blah, 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 blah. Months turned into a year, yada, yada. And now that this podcast is really cooking, and I want to step things up a notch. So I'm sharing my plan with you. Send your good vibes my way to hopefully let this happen. But we're going to try to get Yolanda Vaughn on this podcast. Obviously, she's older. We're in the middle of a thing, so I probably won't be able to do it in person, but there's a great chance that this can happen over the phone, and that's what I'm going to aim for. I think it would be a tremendous kick in the pants to the show and a tremendous benefit to all the listeners that this woman who was under Billie Holiday's wing, sang in a popular jazz group, and lived through it all and is still around to tell the stories, would be amazing. I don't think Yolanda Vaughn has given a really big full interview. I've read some, so I want to be the first, and it can happen. That's my plan. And secondly, whether this plan works or not, like pandemic or not, I have no intention of ending this podcast. It's been hard pressed getting guests, but I have no intention of stopping. If this ends up being me babbling for 40 minutes a week, that's what it is. I'm not letting this podcast fail. Ain't gonna happen. So with all that said, quick update on me. I've been getting a lot of art stuff done. I may be running an RC Legends race this weekend. If that happens, I'll surely be talking about it next week on the podcast. But yeah, I got some new art stuff cooking. I'm just about to finish a ink drawing of jazz harpist Olivia Miller. Almost forgot her last name. That piece of artwork in the progress, and more on my Instagram at Albert Shivers, or on Facebook, look me up, Albert Shivers, and you can also find me on the Facebook like page, Albert Shivers Visual Artist. On this episode, which I am again super excited about, Isaac is back. He and I are going to talk about astral projection and light pollution, and then we are joined by Mike to talk about the de-evolution of humanity due to technology. We also get into horror movies a little bit. It's going to be a fun episode. Let's get to it.
This is WEVD in New York.
Okay, folks, this is another episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. I'm Albert Shivers, and I am once again here joined by Isaac Wilson.
What's up? How's it going?
And we are here in the mountains of Cresco, sitting in an Airstream trailer, which is a perfect place to record such a B-level podcast like this. So we got a lot of topics we're going to hit on. The first thing we're going to hit on is what we covered the last time we did a show together, which is astral projection. Now, for anybody who don't know, astral projection is similar to an out-of-body experience while you're sleeping. Sort of the ability to go around, travel to places when you're asleep, but you feel like you're awake. And correct me if I'm wrong, you are able to control your own like motor skills.
Yes, yeah.
Like you're in control of yourself, and possibly even more in control. Whereas people, they can fly sometimes.
Right.
They could go through walls.
Yep. Transmitting their conscious remotely anywhere. Yeah, you're guided by your thoughts and intentions, as the theory goes.
There you go. So, you recently stumbled across an online book that you haven't read about astral projection.
Yeah. I'm in the process of reading it. I picked it up about a couple days ago. There's this cool website. I guess they're based out of Russia or Siberia or somewhere. But yeah, they do a lot of seminars and stuff teaching, the finer points of how to induce out-of-body experiences and kind of bridging the gaps between the, subtle inner world and the physical world, and what you can do in that sort of in-between state, I guess you could say. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure the book's called The Phase by Michael Raduga, and yeah, it's online for free, so definitely check it out.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. Just yep, that is the name. And 466 free pages.
Yeah.
For people to read. So
there you go.
I got into a little bit of the beginning of it, a couple of pages in, which was very interesting. And I'm looking forward to start trying it again, because it's been a while since I actually tried to do it.
Yeah,
but
same.
I want to give it a shot. But one thing about it, so the last time we talked about the strategy of astral projecting while you're about to go to sleep. But this book also says that it's possible to do as you're waking up.
Yeah.
That in between REM sleep and conscious, there's a window in there.
Right.
Where it can happen.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of breezing through, the different techniques. I guess the more direct technique, as you mentioned, is the, just laying down, trying to get into that like calm sort of state, mental state, and just willing yourself kind of out of your physical self into your more, they call it the subtle body in the book, I guess. And I guess from what I've gathered, that's the more like intermediate to advanced sort of method of doing it, where you can just sort of will yourself out of your body and kind of just think about where you want to go and sort of fly there through, the wormholes or some method of travel higher than our dimension. But yeah, the indirect methods touch mainly on taking advantage of that sort of waking state you're in right as you wake up, and how to like utilize your like headspace at like in those first waking moments to possibly slip back into a more dream state while retaining your consciousness. And from there you can experiment with various methods of separation, I guess, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I've tried a little bit this morning, actually. Right when I woke up, I set an alarm for 6 o'clock, and like before, I guess you're not supposed to really like move your physical self at all, or like even open your eyes, but kind of just like you're conscious. Like that's the biggest thing, and from there you can kind of benchmark and kind of just sort of observe what's in your physical field, like while your eyes are closed, just observing the phosphenes or whatever's swirling around, and from there you can kind of get a better sense of like how awake you are, how conscious you are, and from there you can start to like play around with like okay, so you feel your body in a certain position wherever you were when you woke up, and the main deal is to kind of like not lose that connection, but like realize that you're not just totally bound to the just the physical self, and just like it's let's see here, like for example, if you're sleeping and your hands are kind of supporting your head, you're just sort of laying there trying to like visualize or sensationalize the feeling of like your hands are moving like outwards to your sides, so to speak. Like you're not physically like physically you're just still, you're sleeping, but trying to like get the sensation of movement without actually moving. And if this is done like consecutively enough and like with enough discipline, like I don't know, I'm still like at the very sort of beginning stages of this you could say, but you definitely feel like there is like sensation, like something is going on between like moving yourself outside of like your nervous system, outside of like your physical body, like the sensation of movement is possible. And from there, I guess that's like the big step into starting to separate or like completely transmit yourself outside of the body, which is cool.
Yeah. Like I said in the last one, the furthest I ever got out of my body that I could really remember vividly is I was just walking around my apartment.
Right.
And I knew, like, it was this weird realization where I knew what was happening at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt very fragile.
Gotcha.
It felt like there was part of my mindset that was just like, just lay there still, and I could have moved if I wanted to, so it wasn't like sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew if I did move, it was going to pull me back out of this, like, wandering my apartment like a ghost almost.
Yeah.
It was going to pull me back into my body, and I'd wake up on the couch.
Mm.
So it felt very delicate. But it was, like, it was crazy, and, like, when you realize what's happening.
Yeah. No, it's very much like the, like the fragility of it. Like I've read accounts of people who were like students of this that were like, trying very hard every day to like, get to this state. And it was frustrating that they just weren't really getting anywhere. They were doing all the right steps, everything. It just wasn't really working out. So they're like, oh, screw it. I'm just going to get up. I'm just going to grab some water, start my day. So they get up, go to grab a glass of water, and like their hand like goes through the glass itself. Man. Like they already achieved that, just totally popped out and not even realized it. But yeah, I get what you're saying with the subtlety of it. It's very, very strange. I mean, one method I was working with was even just sitting down, like completely still, but like visualizing the feeling, or like, yeah, I guess just visualizing yourself just rocking back and forth in your chair. But like if you're completely still and holding yourself still, but just hold that feeling in your head, you'll kind of feel like you're filled with this weird fluid. It's weird to feel, but like, so like you rock to the left, and you feel like your left side of your body starts to feel like heavier than the right, and then you move it over to the right, and you're kind of waving back and forth, and you're building this sort of wave pattern. But yeah, it's really weird, and it's not like heavily touched upon, I think, in today's world. I mean, I guess there's more important things in the mind of everybody, but I don't know. I think it's neat. I think the implications could be pretty amazing if I keep going. So I'm gonna keep practicing, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I mean, really, what it is the question of whether, I guess, it's important or not probably only lies in, like, I don't know, because it could be really important.
Yeah, I mean, well, the things you could do like that, that's like it's like craziest superpower out there, is to be able to see anything you want without even really being there. But I guess, yeah, you do definitely have to put the time in, and like keep a regimen going, and work on the skills, and yeah, something I'm working on, I guess.
Yeah, like I said, I haven't tried it in a while, but I've wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And the last couple of times I did try it, I ended up falling asleep.
Yeah.
I couldn't, like, it is this weird thing where you have to kind of keep yourself, if you're doing it at night before you go to bed, you have to kind of keep yourself awake to a degree.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a mental exercise for sure. But just about to say something, forgot it, but damn.
Well, I've been doing this weird mental exercise when I'm going to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Is I'm imagining sleep like it's an endless ocean, like endlessly deep, let's say, ocean, or body of water. It doesn't have to be an ocean.
Yep.
And the more tired I get as I lay there with my eyes closed, the deeper I visualize myself sinking deeper and deeper, further and further from the surface.
Gotcha.
Like treating sleep like it's water.
Oh wow, yeah.
And always end up falling asleep. Like, as I visualize myself going deeper into this ocean,
Oh shoot, yeah.
I always end up just going poof, and I'm out. And it's weird. I can't really understand. I'm sure there's some like mental reason.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird.
It is pretty interesting. Yeah, I guess the biggest thing, if like, again, through lots of practice, you can kind of like just maintain your sort of waking state while everything else shuts down, I guess, for the night, and just low power mode, so to speak. But yeah, like biggest thing is figuring out a method that works for you of like feeling like you're being pulled out or lifted up or sinking down, to just transporting yourself to another place without your body actually moving, I guess is the thing. It's weird. It takes a lot of practice, but it almost feels like unnatural in a sense that you're really just not physically moving at all. It's hard to describe, but yeah.
But the more you attempt it, the more natural it does get. And you will find yourself like getting into the swing of it. It's just like anything else.
Yeah,
like,
you just
repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
Barbasol, Barbasol, ihr darf dem Broschken safe nicht nehmen, schäft zerwiffen sich allein. Barbasol, Barbasol, ah, Barbasol.
So the next thing that we're going to talk about, which goes right along with astral projection and nighttime, is light pollution and how it's messing us up. Because I feel like, to a degree, it is. We may not realize it, but there is a relationship that humans have had with space since, we crawled out of the ocean. And
yes,
light pollution is taking that away.
Indeed,
from us.
Ah, it definitely is. I was thinking about that the other day. It's like that's all we pretty much had once like the whole day is over. It's just dark, but there's just this mysterious sort of net above us that kind of just sort of over time has showed us what's going on, like when to plant food, when to harvest it, this and that. It's like it's almost our main connection. Or it's just weird, like kids today, like a 2-year-old in a city somewhere probably would like never have would even fathom it, if they weren't like showed picture or whatever. Like, and this was just like the last 200 years or whatever, we probably would never have any idea it would get to the point where there's just like this like orange haze above you all the time. Mm-hmm. It's strange, yeah.
Well, yeah, like a little kid in a city, like, let alone smog or like pollution, which is a whole nother thing. But just that, like, we don't get the chance to feel small.
Right.
We don't get the chance to feel like something that is natural is bigger than us. Like, I don't think that looking at a tall ass building is the same as like looking at the moon or the planet or the stars.
Not at all. Yeah, really, I think would give the impression of just being closed in and kind of, caged up in this little bubble of smelly stuff,
Yeah.
Just, yeah, it's strange.
But even so, like, the building is man-made, and we know that.
Yeah.
So we have like this different relationship with it. But the stars and moon and all space, like, it was there before us and it'll be there after us, and it sort of puts us in our place as like a species, maybe.
No, definitely. I mean, it must be humbling shit to just look out at just like how endless everything really is, Like that's probably the biggest thing that, like you said, just puts it in perspective, just how small and like insignificant all of our problems and personalities and just everything is in the grand scheme of things. And like like the more people are away from that, I think just the harder it will be to sink in. You're just like stuck in a weird haze, so to speak. I mean, I wonder if it probably definitely messes up with like the circadian rhythms and everything too, of everyone just in that, it's almost like daytime all the time in a certain sense. Just a really dull sort of strange.
Yeah. No, and especially like the more populated area you are. And it was weird for me to come up here from the city. And it took me time to get used to that. Like, not only the fact that there are no street lights or anything else, but even the just quietness.
Yeah.
You know, like no engines, no cars, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like just quiet.
Yeah.
Took a while to get used to, because in turn, like, you get used to having to deal with constant light pollution and constant noise, and you just grow used to it. Whereas, like, the silence, you know, like, if you're used to it, you're used to it, but, like, it was always like that for people.
Right.
And now, like, it's probably pretty scarce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it really is a hard thing to put in perspective, and, like, you know, you really wouldn't know how much it's affecting you unless, you know, you really just see what the whole other world's like, you know. I mean, I've kind of lived in this semi-rural area for most of my life, you know, and, you know, it is very quiet, you know. Of course, there's engines and stuff going, but, you know, you definitely get a good view of the night sky, which is awesome. But even moving, you know, further north, you know, we, like, made a trip up to Maine not too long ago, and where we were staying, it really is just, like, just dead quiet. Like even being here in this wooded area, I just was not used to that level of, you know, just total solitude, or just total, like, natural order of things. And looking up at the night sky, like I was just amazed. I just couldn't, like, stop staring at, like, how many more stars there were in an area where, like, civilization or, like, you know, humanity hasn't really inhabited that much or to a greater effect than here. You know, it's like there's so many more stars with just, like, and, you know, with however many less people there were up there. Yeah, it was wild.
And you were telling me, isn't that where you guys go up there, one of the darkest points on the East Coast?
Yes. Yeah, just from where it is, like between, like, the just how low the population is, and just, like, how high up it is, and latitude. Yeah, that is, like, probably one of the darkest points on the eastern seaboard. I'm pretty sure it's the up there in Maine is, like, the first place in America where, you know, you kind of, you know, daytime kind of happens. Like, the sun's up at, like, 4:30 some days. It's pretty wild. But yeah, it's like, it's this whole like it's the universe, you know, just, like, right there in front of you, and, like, nothing's really keeping you in between aside from the atmosphere and all that. But yeah, there's just, like, people born in, like, you know, into that sort of urban world just really would have no idea of just how huge it is, you know. So it's very strange.
No, and that's another point. Like, you know, when I lived in New York, you can go to any borough and you would find multiple people who've never been out of their own neighborhood.
Yeah.
Never been out of their own neighborhood. And when you try, all right, better example. 10th grade, Curtis High School, Staten Island, New York. I had a earth science course. Okay?
Yeah.
The teacher, first day class, teacher throws up a map onto the projector of New York State.
Okay. Yeah.
And some girl in the audience, I was gonna say, in the class, says, "That's not New York. That's the country, isn't it?" And she was like, "No, this is New York State." And this girl's like, "Wait, New York is a state?" And she thought that New York was just like the boroughs.
Wow.
So it'd be like Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Staten Island, and Queens. That's what she thought the state of New York was. And all that other Michigas up there was just the rest of the country.
10th grade, right?
10th grade.
Wow. Yeah.
That's high school. So, like, there are so many people in cities that never leave it, and they're fine. They're probably doing great. I went to just staying in New York State, like, just a trip to, like, Canandaigua, New York, where I went to see a show, which is on one of the Great Lakes. Like, that's a 5-hour drive through just woods.
Yeah.
Just nothing. You know, and so much of America is like that. It doesn't make it any worse.
Yeah.
But to me, it just is that much more left to experience.
Definitely.
You know?
No, for sure. I mean, that's pretty much how it was like, you know, minus this last, you know, however many, even 300 years, just how, you know, how industrialized we've become on this, you know, exponential graph, this hockey stick graph of just like straight up, you know, development, if you call it that. But yeah, it's like, I feel like it's just a great sort of way or tool almost to like get more in touch with yourself, knowing that how like this is sort of where you came from, this like unconscious sort of natural wild domain we inhabit. You know, it's quite a step up, I think, in my opinion. Just, you know, being out somewhere in the wilderness, you know, it's neat. I was curious. I've been looking for like footage or like any sort of insight into the phenomena of like just total, like citywide, you know, power outage, just blackout. Like, how long does like the light pollution, you know, subsist in the atmosphere after everything goes out? Like, would you assume that, like, you know, lights out and then it's just like, oh, no more light pollution, or like would it linger? I have no idea, but I think it's a cool concept, you know. Like, if the switch is flipped, like, I don't know, it just seems weird, like that much expanse of like sky could just instantly just like turn off, you know. I mean, it probably just fades out.
Yeah, I mean, it would. I bet you it would really depend on our ability for our eyes to adjust and how quickly they could.
Yeah, that's very true.
Like, I would be curious to this. If you took a person living in, let's say, this part of Maine, that's the darkest part of Maine, a person who is used to being able to look up and see just listless stars in the sky and planets and the moon and the whole bit, and then a person in a city whose eyes have been used to light pollution. I'm curious if there's a difference in those two people.
Yeah.
As a person who's lived their entire life with light pollution and a person who's never had it.
Right.
You know, or very rarely had it, you know, no buildings or anything. Not to the level of LA or New York City or Chicago.
Right. It is crazy though. It's like, I don't know, the further you look, it like you were saying with that painter of the constellations you touched on, like, yeah, like really if you just focus in on one spot, just like how intricate it gets, and just like how much detail and like information, just how many stars are in like one little, you know, square inch from your vision of, it's just, yeah, it is nuts. Like, doesn't even compare, you know. It's very strange.
You know, like one thing we were also once talking about was how, which goes along with light pollution, is how the Native Americans and hunter-gatherers, maybe even of the world, would use clicking at night to navigate through the woods, that whether or not, like, even on a moonless night, you know, they would be able to run through a wooded area and not, you know, crash into a tree.
Gotcha.
Because that, you know, like, they never had to deal with the cushiness of lights,
right?
Sorta from that perspective. So they had to have better night vision.
Definitely, yeah. I mean,
you know, and our eyes are probably just all mushy and wimpy compared to vision of, you know, 10,000 years ago.
Yeah, no, it's kind of depressing that, you know, the sort of like physiology in us that has been, you know, aided in keeping us alive and, you know, just aiding with our survival is probably definitely atrophied, or is atrophying pretty quick, as the, you know, we're just sort of living in this you know, system or whatever, you know, where food is provided based on, you know, charge on wealth. You know, there's really no incentive to like go out and get it for yourself. So, you know, there's no reason for us to really have great night vision anymore, which is kind of sad. But I mean, the the genetics are still in there. You know, they're just different codes that are waiting to be activated unless they're just weeded out through, you know, years and years of, you know, it's weird. But yeah, that I've been trying to, you know, work with that a little bit, and I don't know. You know, you can definitely like take substances and various things. You know, some of them a little touchy, but various you know, funguses you can ingest, which do amplify your vision or you know, light intake into the eyes. So I mean, we're definitely capable of this on our own. You know, it's just like we sort of need the aid of various plants to do so. But it's definitely like in our genetics to be able to you know, heighten our senses to points of, you know, what we call the normal. I mean, I'm pretty sure, you know, with the fight or flight responses too, you know, like eye dilation and just we go through all these like very fast, quick physiological changes. But yeah, it's kind of going downhill a little bit maybe. But.
Yeah, probably. I would say so. I mean, these human eyes that took thousands, hundreds of millions of years to evolve is now being perpetually bombarded with little tiny screens.
Yep.
All the time.
High energy.
Yeah.
Electromagnetic radiation. It is weird.
So who knows how that's gonna like affect our vision in the future? We're gonna have like 12-year-olds with bifocals.
Yep. Oh yeah. It's a sad scene.
Joe en Paul, als door een vaar genieten, brabberilla Joe en Paul, dat weet je bully kriegen, brabberilla zoet, a koud, a gieten zolle perfect, a feten daftier, kuiven, naar bij Joe en Paul.
So this is the one that we're never going to hear, right? Because this is the one where we talk about all the things we're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Okay,
well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the people might hear it though.
People? Fuck people.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
All right. So we left off where you wanted to jump in on this one, so we waited for it.
All right.
Which was
de-evolution
and mental de-evolution.
Well, people are comfy, you know. I always think of it as like when you're walking out. Okay, there was a time I think that human beings, you could sort of drop them off in the woods and they could find their way back to their camp or their home or their place or whatnot, because just like any other animal, they just had sort of a kind of sense about things. And then you can tell the difference between some of these hillbillies back here hunting turkeys in Cresco, or if you're out in New York City, if you're running around looking for which way to go and you're following the street signs and the arrows everywhere, you know, like you lose that ability. And not just like one generation, not just like one person growing up in the city, but like generations after generations of telling you which way you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to eat and what you're supposed, you know, I think it does dull their senses. I think there's a little piece of their brain that's just shrunk, you know, went from a P to a jujube, I think. And, you know, one of my favorite tricks was, not that you just do this, but I know it can be done. You could just decide to take a ride up into Canada with some of your American type friends, and in certain areas there's no billboards or advertisements. They've just secured that. Right. The law says nope, no Snapple signs. So you can do that. You can take your friends up for a nice big ride through Canada, and they'll go through all these wonderful mountains and trees and falls and scenery, and they get jumpy, they get crazy in the head, and they're like, ugh, there's nothing around here, nothing, you know. Yeah. And I've experienced that, and I've also heard from other people that the American folks have a bad case of, you know, which way do I go? What should I buy?
Yeah, where's
the Burger King? You can't go so far without a strip mall and dependent on things like that. And see, now I'm old enough to realize, I think in the last 2-3 years somewhere, something snapped in me, and it's like, okay, I'm 50 years old, but I'm still, the young punk who runs around at rock concerts and befriends all the young artists in town and everything else, and they were getting under my skin for the longest time, but like something just snapped, and I'm like, it's over. I'm done. I am more than happy to just say goodbye and become the grumpy, crotchety old man. And this is just one example of that. And I remember getting around with a sense of direction. And the GPS is pretty cool, I have to admit, but still, I remember a time without it. And I also remember doing a lot of delivery jobs without a cell phone at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I got my first little flip phone, in fact, 2 phones I got, and was driving down the road thinking, what am I, fucking stupid? Almost running into trees and shit, looking at my stupid phone, and I threw them out the window. Just, goodbye. And I'm like, no. But it wasn't to be. I simply could not be a delivery driver anymore without dangerously distracting myself with a phone while I drive. No matter what people say, and no matter how much bullshit they give you, that's the evolution, de-evolution. That's where we've gone.
It's unfathomable for like people my age to like not just navigate
Impossible.
anywhere without it. It's like can't do it anymore. It's a little disconcerting.
What's the movie that you had shown me, Isaac? The POV movie.
Yeah, Enter the Void.
Into the Void, yeah. I never made it through the whole thing, but
it's not nearly as fucked up as any of this. But I mean, the concept's pretty.
I saw some of it.
Yeah, it follows some trashy.
You watched the whole thing?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say I don't know. I should get through it all the way. Does it have a point perspective?
Yeah, I mean, well, it pretty much it's based off of like the whole Tibetan Book of the Dead thing. Like. What's it? It is.
I started to watch it, but I couldn't.
Yeah, no,
I didn't have the time for it really.
I mean, it does like as far as like the psychedelic type thing, like it does a pretty amazing job of like capturing that sort of like after death like DMT release and all that shit. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, it does its best to kind of like again, it just follows like the lowly drug dealer, and he ends up getting like sucked back in, reborn and shit. But yeah, like it's pretty awesome. Is it like as well as they try to adhere to like the whole spiel of like the book itself, but yeah, again, it just follows like shitty like low life drug dealer type stuff. If you can get over that, like the visuals, just like spirits flying around and shit, it's pretty neat.
No, I'm always up for. I'm up for anything. I'm a hard nut. I gotta see it all. And truthfully, the really fucked up things are not my favorites. It's funny, but half of my favorite films over there on the shelf are TV movies of the 70s and movies that are PG.
Mm.
But I used to make it a point just to see all the crazy ones.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, when I was young, I used to go to when I first went to the Chiller Horror Convention, I said, oh man, it's a whole world of horror, and I want lots and lots of money. And so I would go into that thing and I would get all the really twisted movies that people would want. And then I would come back and bootleg them. So, I had the guinea pig movies, and I have a lot of the horrid ones, and they're not favorites. I mean, like like Audition, everybody loves that one, and it's hideous, and it's effective.
Yeah, I wimped out of that one.
You wimped out of that one?
With you, I wimped out of it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Like, creepy little shy Asian lady who was just torturing the guy, when I sit there and I watch Saw, you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's kind of stupid, it's just, I can tell that this was written by some 17-year-old Japanese kid. It was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if buzzsaw came out and sliced their head open sideways. It's just it's a lot of that shit's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I think effective to me
gets in your head
is something where, like the movie you showed me, where the first thing you have to do is you have to get people to care about the people you're killing. And so if you want to mangle somebody 20 different ways and you don't give a fuck about them, then it doesn't matter.
Right.
And you got Die Hard 23 where you can mow down 800 people. Texas Chainsaw Massacre killed 2 or 3 in the whole movie and tortured the shit out of that girl. You got those huge angles of her bloody red eye near her, yeah, like that. That one I watch over and over again. Probably every year I watch it.
Which movie though was it that I showed you?
The one that you showed me was Trouble Every Day. Is that the one I'm thinking
It's
of?
the Cannibals.
Cannibal
Yeah.
Girl.
Yeah.
So the girl that's like, there's a dude and he's got a girl.
Yeah.
She's got a fetish and it's cannibalism and like
he's trying to cure her.
Trying
and
to
he keeps
cure
eating people.
her and
yeah.
And at the end you got to give in. That's the whole thing. You got a relationship between two people. When she eats them, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
So, like Pan's Labyrinth, man. Like I watched that movie, and it was just a moment in that movie where the fucking nasty sergeant takes a bottle and cracks the kid's nose off with it in front of his father. Like that stuck to me as much as any Serbian film. Just like it. Certain ideas. I always thought Cannibal Holocaust was like one of the most horrid to me, not because I really have any kind of issue with gore and you can rape people with logs and whatever. I can take the imagination of the sickest mind, but when you take a bunch of pygmies from some island and then you introduce them into this fantasy of rape and mutilation, like that's the thing that I thought was creepy. It's like, I'm like, okay, you guys went over there and you played this game and made these films with these people. I hope that their girlfriends were all right when you left there. You know what I mean? Like, you chop up some kangaroos and shit. That's just what they do over there. That might piss some people off, but I mean, the whole thing was a big rape fantasy. You know what I mean? And I don't know that they do or don't over there, but it was certainly suggested to these little people.
Right.
Like the things that we do,
God, this
like
is
back
so
in
funny.
it's like back in.
Imagine there's just like these like fucking white guys calling gory shit.
Yeah, they say we're gonna do this movie and you pretend to rape her with a log. It's pretty fucked up. It's like back in the day in Coney Island when the business tycoon tried to take on the artists and build the biggest fantasy island park, and he grabbed all these natives and shit from all over different islands and brought them in, and they lived in the resort. You know what I mean? And
wow.
they end up snapping and going crazy, and one murdered people, and
I can see that. Yeah.
And he had live executions of elephants.
Jesus.
There's some Mondo shit right there. You want to watch an amazing film for every aspect of it is the documentary film about Coney Island.
Yeah.
And I can't remember its name, but I know that Grandpa from the Munsters.
Al Lewis, right?
Is that his name?
Yeah.
He was the narrator of the film.
Yeah.
But he shows, a clip of... If you ever watch the Nine Inch Nails video where they show a clip of a big elephant just like going, zzz, and being paralyzed and falling over. Mm-hmm. What that was these creeps out in Coney Island that were trying to do anything to outdo each other to put on a big show for everybody. There was Luna Park, there was Steeplechase, and then there was the Future Park or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was the one that had all those pygmies in it and shit. So some kid, threw a lit cigarette to an elephant. And of course, it took it and went crazy, and so now they thought, well, they're going to have to kill the elephant. Well, let's make a show out of it. And so they set up the ring, and they put the elephant out there with these shackles around him, like a giant electric chair for elephants, and they execute it for entertainment.
Wow.
There you go. You want to know some fucked up shit? Right there it is.
Yeah.
But then exploitation, what does it do for people as well? Like, that's why whenever I get into these conversations, I like to talk about, and again, I'm really bad with names and dates and things, but I remember the movie Freaks, and I remember it has a lot of real freaks in it.
Yeah, it was 1932.
1932.
Todd Browning was the director and the dude who did that. He also did Dracula, and he was supposed to do
Dracula.
Yeah, and Todd Browning also was supposed to do London After Midnight.
No shit. Maybe he has it.
Maybe he does.
Well, so.
But yeah, Freaks.
Yeah, Freaks. You know, and of course that movie was pretty much telling the story of the shit that was going down before, you know, the Hollywood era, when everything was on film. It was like when people are running around in the country with circuses, you know, and the freak shows exploiting people. So I remember reading this big story, and it's a long time ago, and I can't remember all the details and dates about it, but there was a person who turned into a group, a lawyer's guild of people that went up to defend the freaks because they were being exploited. And they said that they're doing this and they're doing that, they're treating people like shit, and they're throwing them out there in front of people to look at and poke fun at and and this, that, and the other kind of thing, and it's terrible, blah, 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 blah. And they fought and they fought and they fought, and they took it to court, and they won. So now, hooray, the freaks. I don't know who collected any money off of that, probably the lawyers. But anyway, after they won the case, one day they got a visit from a bunch of little people, and the fat lady and the bearded person and the this, that, and the other kind of thing. And those people approached these people. And this was one of the first legal cases I ever read about. And they said, "Who the fuck are you, asshole?" Said, "Generation after generation of a bunch of us freaks being thrown in a dungeon or a basement somewhere with a bunch of religious people thinking that we're demons, and we just, suddenly the freak show came, the circus came, and we had friends, we had money, camaraderie, we had all these things that we never had before. And in fact, it was the freak shows that gave those people their place, you know?" And I, to this day, am always a supporter of exploitation, so as to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, even if that's what you want to say. You know, but like time and time and time again, it seems like it works in people's favor in the end.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Planet Shivers podcast. You can check out this episode and more on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and the podcast app. You could find my work on Instagram at Albert Shivers, and you could find Isaac Wilson's work on Instagram at when_in_zen. Hope you enjoyed this whole podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on, including the Albert Shivers YouTube channel. Thank you again for listening, and have a great week.